Hi, how are you guys doing? My hair looks kind of crazy today because I didn't feel like doing it, so I put it up in buns. I'm in a good mood today. Why? Because we finally finished the Haunting Adeline duet.
What the hell? Oh my god!
It felt like it took forever, even though it really only took 2 weeks. I guess I should probably introduce myself before I forget. Welcome back to the channel if you are not new here. My name is Celeste, and here we just talk about book stuff. Whether it's book reviews, book community, book content, whatever it is, it's probably gonna be related to a book. So this is technically a part 2, because this is the second book in a series. So if you have not watched the first video, I will have it linked somewhere on the screen somewhere, and I would recommend go watching that. If you haven't read the book, I wouldn't recommend going and reading it, but if you want to, I read it on Kindle Unlimited. You can probably go find it in your books at a bookstore. You can listen to it on Audible, whatever you want. Before we get into everything, I just want to put a little disclaimer. In my last video, I didn't say this, but whenever I'm talking about mental health, I'm usually talking about it in the way that it was described in the book. It is not lost on me that there are a lot of words that people don't like when it comes to mental health, such as crazy, screws loose, XYZ. Those were things that I read in the book, and so I kind of kept true to the source, but I understand that that is not language that we want to use around mental health. There are some instances in this PowerPoint where I do use wording from the book, but I just want to put a disclaimer that I'm using wording from the book, and I'm using the way that the author describes these things through the characters. So I totally understand the stigmas and the language to use around mental health. So I will be more careful and more diligent about trying my best to use better wording than my source material. So let's just get into it. I decided to do a PowerPoint again because people told me that they liked this format, so we're gonna keep it because I really liked it. It helped me a lot. So let's just get into it. Here it is. I used the same PowerPoint, okay? I didn't feel like doing a completely new one. And because okay, first off, before anyone's like, that's so lazy, I tried to make the first PowerPoint based off of the cover art. And in my defense, the cover art for both these books is very similar. So similar, in fact, that I accidentally read a little bit of Hunting Adeline before I read Haunting Adeline, because the cover art was so similar and the names are so similar. I didn't mention that in the last video because it was kind of embarrassing, but yeah, so yeah, I changed like 3 things on here. I understand, but deal with it. Okay, so this is my book report. This is Hunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. So same thing, we're gonna go over the summary. It's the same summary format as the last one, where it doesn't really tell you anything about the plot, but whatever. So here's the summary. This is what's on the book. This is what's on Goodreads and anywhere that you try and look at the book. It says, "The Diamond. Death walks alongside me, but the Reaper is no match for me. I am trapped in a world full of monsters dressed as men and those who aren't as they seem. They won't keep me forever. I no longer recognize the person I've become, and I'm fighting to find my way back to the beast who haunts me in the night. They call me a diamond, but they've only created an angel of death. The Hunter. I was born a predator with ruthlessness." Jesus Christ. "I was born a predator with ruthlessness ingrained in my bones. When what's mine is stolen from me in the night, like a diamond hidden within a fortress. I find that I can no longer contain the beast. Blood will paint the ground as I tear apart this world to find her and bring her back to where she belongs. No one will escape my wrath, especially not those who have betrayed me." So essentially, Addie has been kidnapped, and Zaid, the hunter, has to go find her. Okay? That's really it. Okay, let's get into these characters. So first we have Adeline. I changed her picture. I feel like this is kind of like her energy for most of the book because she's really fucking going through it. And then like whenever I imagined her like using a gun, I imagined this meme of Kris Jenner. She is just horribly blind to every red flag available. And again, she's suffering from PTSD and she's dead on the inside, but still horny. So let's go over just the big parts of her character. So like I said, she's been kidnapped. Her red flag detector, as I talked about over here, is broken. She has PTSD, but it becomes like the sexy kind. I don't really know. She's still stupid, but not as stupid as the first book. She kills people now. She's really going through it. And I added this because there were 2 different instances in the book where a character said, "You stink." So I put, "She smells bad." And they were like after she was rescued. So the first time made sense because she had just gotten home, I think. And then the second time, like, I think she was like training or something, but her mom still was like, "You smell." And I was like, damn girl, someone had to tell you that you fucking reek 2 times in a single book. So I had to put it. So that's Adeline. Ooh. Next one is Zaid. So, yeah, this is his energy in the book. This is all I can think about. I love this picture, but because he says baby girl so many times, and anytime that he said baby girl, I could only hear it in like, if you guys have seen 365 days.
Are you lost, baby girl?
That's all I could hear. Okay, I'm sorry. That's all I could hear. Anytime he said something, this was what I immediately just felt. I was like, please tell me you're joking. He is still so fucking cringe. And this was not him because there was a shower scene, but I saw this and I felt like I had to add it. So, things with his character in this book, he is still cringe. He literally will not stop saying baby girl. This one I just wanted to exaggerate for shits and giggles. Eco-terrorism capitalist. He just owns a private jet. He actually made some good points in this book, and that is the only time I will admit that. He's a Virgo man, which I have seen people on the reviews, they're like, he should have been a Scorpio. Have you ever met a Virgo man? Because this makes sense, okay? Scorpio men, yeah, they're passionate and whatever. This bitch is an earth sign through and through. Maybe he has like a Scorpio. I don't want to give him a Scorpio rising. I have a Scorpio rising. Maybe he has like a Scorpio Mars or like Venus or something. But I don't think he's a Scorpio sun. So I agree with the author that he is a Virgo man. And it explains quite a lot. I've met plenty of Virgo men in my time, and I have not liked a majority of them. And then he talks way too goddamn much. Oh my god, there were so many points of dialogue that I was like, can he shut the fuck up? And they were always like in the most stupid times too. I'll go over it when I get to like some of the quotes. But god, he does not shut the fuck up. All right, we have a new one this time. Sibby. Okay, and here's my disclaimer right here. As described by the book. Oh my god, she's so crazy. Because that's what all the characters talk about, is that they just call her crazy all the time. And like, here's not to say that she doesn't have something. I don't know what it is. I put this picture here. A, because I think this picture is fucking hilarious. B, because it is very, very heavily implied that she has schizophrenia. But never stated. And then I saw this picture and I was like, that's kind of funny. I feel like I have to kind of put it in there. More violence, because she is just a tiny little ball of anger and like loves throwing body parts everywhere. You literally can't stop her. I feel like if I had a picture of Sibby, this is what she would look like. Like, she would be wearing this and all. Like, this is her. This is Sibby. She loves doing illegal shit. So, she has escaped prison. She's a killer. She killed a lot of people in the last book. This was like a question. So she like has these, I think it's like 5 or 4 henchmen. They're not real. Okay, so that's where the schizophrenia part comes in. But she's like constantly quote unquote fucking them, and which is basically just her doing everything herself. And so this was like a question. I was like, is it still a reverse harem if her partners, is it still a reverse harem if her partners aren't real? I don't know. I'm not going to read her book because I don't think I could take anymore. So I'm not going to be able to answer that question, but I don't know. Someone could figure it out. And then I also said that therapy bill that she would have would be a bombastic. That thing would be long. She really needs to talk to someone. All of these characters really need to talk to someone aggressively. Okay, timeline is back. Okay, I know. Don't look at that. I'm covering it. Okay. Timeline is back. It is equally as crazy as the first one, but I needed it. Okay. So we're just gonna go through the plot. All right. So first thing, we open back up. I think we open with. Yeah, we open with Addie. So Addie has been recently kidnapped by the society. And I'm kind of jumping a little bit. I'm kind of just to make sure that my timeline all fit on one page. I didn't do every single like time that we switched back to Addie or Zaid. There's some things that are clumped together that I know didn't happen at the same time, but for the most part, they happened around the same time because Addie and Zaid's plot lines are parallel to each other. So if things are out of order, I don't care because I needed to fit them in these tiny little boxes. Okay. Okay. I'll get on with it. So we open up the book with Addie, who has recently been kidnapped by the society. She's at this like hospital, not like hospital. She's at like a house that they use as like a hospital. There's like a doctor there who definitely is just straight up performing malpractice. He's super, super creepy towards her. He wakes her up and is like, hey, we need to go. And she's like, what are you talking about? And mind you, like, she had just at the end of the first book, she had gotten into a car accident, was beat the fuck up, literally had like cuts and bruises. She has like these 2 giant cuts on her back that have stitches. And so she gets up without like really much help. And so she gets up and she's like walking with him, and then he tries to, tell her like, we're going to go somewhere safe. I'm going to take you away from here. She realizes that if she leaves this place, that it'll be even harder for Zaid to find her. And then they're in like a scuffle, and Rio, who was one of the guys that rammed into her car, kidnapped her, shoots him. So that's kind of Addie's point. That's what's going on with Addie at the beginning of the book. Then we switch over to Zaid. I'm just only going over big plot points. I don't care about all the little shit. Zaid, he goes and searches for Daya, finds her trapped with Luke. He takes him back. He tortures Luke. He lets Daya take a hand at it. They kill her. They don't kill her. They kill him. And then Daya, and Jade are now working together to find Addie. Then Addie is moved to a remote home in Oregon, where she is among other girls who are being groomed by a woman named Francesca and also her brother Rocco. I think there's like 5 girls, and kind of the way that it works is that like they get to the house, they do like training, which essentially is like just the grooming process of like getting them ready for how do you say no? What do you do if he tells you to get on your knees? What do you say? What do you blah, blah, blah. But it's also filled with like a bunch of men who take advantage of the fact that there's girls there that have no autonomy at all. So there are a lot of really hard scenes that happen during the first half of the book. So Addie gets to this home in Oregon where she's put in this room and she's like, I don't know, doing her thing. And then one night she wakes up and someone is in her walls and they're like looking at this little spot on the floor, and Addie gets curious, opens the spot and finds a journal from I think like 2008, and it was by a girl named Molly, and it just kind of describes, you know, ways that she was thinking about escaping, what she was waiting for, and so this journal keeps her sane during her time there. It gives her a way to describe what's going on, keep her oriented because they're not telling her what day it is. And it also kind of is a way to implement the format of the last book, where instead of now reading her great grandma's journals, which she had found in the last book, we are now reading some of Molly's journal entries and then also Addie's journal entries. So it's the same format every time. She continues with it throughout the entire book. So we switch back to Zaid, who finds Max. He tracks him down for answers. Max reveals that he gave Addie up to the society not only for money, but because he thought that Zaid killed his dad, and without verifying, he's like, fine, then I'll just go put this woman into, you know, human trafficking, without even verifying if like he was right. And Zaid like rightfully is like, why the fuck did you not just ask? Which at the same time, it's like, why would he? You know, but still, it's like, wow, what a conclusion to jump to, and then a decision to make. And so he tries to get answers out of Max. Max doesn't really have too much because he doesn't have any more contact with Rio, and I think it's like Rico, I think, is the other guy. There's a lot of R names. Rio, Rico, Rocco. Okay, maybe that's the only ones. He doesn't really know much because they got paid. He gave Rio and whatever the other guy's name is his cut, and then they like cut ties because that's how they keep it, you know, untraceable. And so he just tortures him and kills him. We go back to Addie. All the girls are like lined up for like a check or something, or like to see, you know, what is wrong with them. Basically, there's a girl who has a mole on her face, and it's a mole, so it grows hair, and I guess she just hadn't plucked it or taken out the hair. And so Rocco, Francesca's brother, is ordered by Francesca to cut it out. And so he starts, and Addie stands up for her. She's like, hey, that's fucked up. Why the fuck are you doing that? And he gets really pissed, and he assaults her. It's a very graphic scene. It's very hard to read. But it is the first of a couple, I would say. And I think it just kind of really sets the stage for what Addie is in for. It kind of teaches her that you're kind of on your own, and, you know, these people won't think twice about punishing you, or are literally looking for a reason to punish you. So she quickly learns to try her best to keep her mouth shut. We come back over to Zaid, who finds the first home that she was in, the one where she was with the doctor. He and Jay visit the home, and they see, you know, the doctor's decomposing body. They go over all of the like footage and the security cameras. They find out that the doctor has been doing gross stuff for a really long time. Like, to give an example, like if a girl would come and then she would have to be sedated, usually because she was injured, he would do his thing. He would assault her while she was unconscious, and he was doing this for years. And he also finds that it's not only a human trafficking ring that is running out of this house, but also an organ ring, an organ trade, I guess, is happening. And so it's like, oh, okay, so I'm going to find these other people who work in the organ trade. So he gets all the files that he needs, hangs the doctor up, and then sets the place on fire. And then we're still continuing with Zaid. He meets the people of the organ trade. I think it's like 4 men. And he's like, well, he doesn't really blackmail them, but he kind of gives them like, hey, I know this about you. You know this about me. Why don't we just help each other? Because the people of the organ trade, they're kind of supposed to be similar to Zaid, where they're doing wrong things, but for the right reason. So they like take out bad people, I think, and like take their organs and then give them to people who are on the like organ transplant list, because it takes forever to get an organ. Essentially their thought is like, we're helping people who have been failed by our health system. And so he's like, I'll give you an IOU if you help me with Addie. And they're like, fine, whatever. So they help with figuring out how to get to these auctions where they sell all the girls. They get him the information, and then that's kind of their part in the book. Then we switch back over to Addie, and so we learned that there's another girl, her name's Sydney, and she's been there for a while. She's been there for like, I think they said 4 years, and she just constantly keeps like evading being put up for sale because she's, I would almost say she's like vindictive. You know, like she definitely has some stuff that is really like waning on her and like really affecting her mentally. She's definitely got some undiagnosed things. I don't know what, but I would probably say she's suffering from some sort of PTSD, and it's coming out in like a very vindictive way, where she just keeps starting shit with Addie and getting Addie in trouble. Mostly so if Addie can't be sold, Sydney can't be sold. So she's kind of self-preserving, but in turn she's also hurting someone else, so it's not a good way of doing it. Like some of the ways is that she like messed up a bunch of Francesca's shoes, and she did it after Addie was directed to kiss Francesca's shoe, and Francesca was like, I could tell that you didn't want to do that, so you got to work on that. And then directly after, Sydney like fucked up a bunch of her heels and made it look like Addie had done it, and it led to this really, really painful scene with a shoe, and a place that you don't want a shoe. Yeah. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So Rio, who is the guy that was one of the guys that initially kidnapped Addie, he is kind of like a safe place for Addie, because he's the person that is now tending to her wounds now that the doctor is dead, and so someone has to do it. And this comes, like, we learn all this a little bit later in the book, but I figured I'll just say it now. We learn that he is doing all of this, like, he's working in the trade because his sister has been captured, and she's kind of used as collateral by the society, essentially being like, if you don't do what we want you to do, then we're gonna, sell her or kill her or make her life worse, which in turns make your life worse, so just listen to us. We also learn that he is a victim of Francesca. So he's doing very wrong things by participating, but he does have reasons that he needs to continue, or he can't really get out of it. He is helping Addie throughout all of this and like giving her pointers, getting her away from certain things by being like, oh, I gotta go clean her stitches and stuff. So he is like her one, other than journals, like her one point of sanity throughout this entire time. Next, Addie joins something called the culling. So when the girls are, I don't know what the timeline is. I think it's like 1 month over the course of a month from what it seemed like, because there was a week where she couldn't do anything, and then like a week of training, or a week and a half of it, and then they have this thing called the culling, which makes no sense in my head. Like, it didn't, I don't know, but it essentially is like, I don't know, it's like a hunting So like all the girls are hunted by potential buyers. And if you are caught and they are like using crossbows, if you are hit with a bow, then you are caught, you failed, and then you get tortured and killed. So your goal is to make it for the entirety of the time, either be like evading capture or evading being shot with a fucking bow, or you make it out of this quote unquote maze. The reason why this doesn't make sense in my head is because okay, so each girl is a prophet of their own. So why willingly like make them damage their body by running barefoot in a fucking forest at night and then like killing them? Like what's like, then you're not making a profit off of them. I think the whole purpose of it was A, to like show the depravity of some of these men, and B, to give Addie a way to figure out where she is, like run around and find out how to get out of the maze and like find the train tracks. But I don't know, I feel like that could have been done a little bit differently, because truthfully that plotline just did not really make sense to me. If anyone else kind of knows why or like caught something that I didn't, let me know, because that part just really threw me for a loop. But essentially, so Addie is hunted by a man named Xavier. Again, she's known as the Diamond. So this guy is like really rich, and he sees her and he's like, I want to hunt you. And he's also a likely buyer. So Addie is like running and she's doing all these things, like covering her tracks. She's doing everything right, where she's being quiet. She's covering her tracks. She's using the training that Zayd gave her. And this girl, Phoebe, is like, let me go with you. And so it takes a while where she's like, no, fucking leave me alone. Like, I have to go. Like, leave me alone. Run. And Phoebe's like, no, let me stay with you. And so eventually she's like, fine, whatever. So they're running. And eventually Phoebe's hunter, I don't remember his name, Ben. I think it was Ben. And Xavier catch up to them. Phoebe is shot. So she's done for, no matter what, even if she gets away or not. And so she like manages to get her hunter, I think I'm just gonna call him Ben, I think his name is Ben. She manages to get Ben into a trap and kill him with the crossbow because he drops it. And Addie makes it out to the maze, so she can't be touched. But then she finds out that obviously Phoebe and another girl named Bethany failed, and so they are tortured and killed. And the killing part was a part that like really like actually hurt for me, because first off, okay, this part was like, what the fuck? So the men like torture and just basically like mutilate these girls to the point where they're like begging for death. They take them outside, and then all the other girls, like 3 other girls, have to stone them to death, but they get to throw like 1 stone. And I was like, what's the... Why stoning? I don't know. But when it comes to Addie's turn, she walks up to Phoebe and like actively hits her with a rock in a way that will kill her instantly so that she doesn't have to suffer, because Phoebe saved her life, essentially. And she's like, I will not forget this, so I will repay you by giving you a quick death. And then it switches to 2 months later. So Addie has now been in this for, I think, like 3 months now. And we find out that all of the girls, or the remaining 2 girls, were auctioned. And Sydney and Addie are the only ones left in the house. And so with the info that he obtained from the organ guys, Zayd manages to get to the auction, and he is able to buy the 2 girls that were in the house, that were left in the house with Addie, at their auction. Zayd like buys all the girls, has Jay like lock the doors, wire his money back, and then he kills everyone and kind of makes a big old scene of it so that the society and Claire know, like, hey, I'm coming for you. But he makes a big scene. And so he makes such a big scene that Addie is then visited by Claire, and she's like, oh, your boyfriend just kind of fucked up something for me. So I thought I would let you know that you are not going to be auctioned. You're going to be privately sold to Xavier. And we find out that Xavier basically has already essentially bought her. Like, it's been known that he was going to be the buyer. And so they've just kind of let him do nearly whatever. On his visits, he assaults her, and he uses a knife, because he, like, gets off on the blood and, like, the pain that she feels when he, like, cuts her. And so it's, like, really grotesque and gross, but he, like, essentially, he's the buyer. And so they're saying, like, in a week, you will be bought, or, like, a week or 3 days, I don't remember how long, but it's, like, 3 days to a week, I think. You will be bought and shipped over to Xavier. So she's like, fuck. Like, that's the last thing I want. I need to get the fuck out of here. So with her journal, she starts to write her escape plan. It's been in the same spot, like this little spot on the floor. For some reason, like, I knew that Sydney was probably reading it because she was the one that was in her fucking walls. It felt very obvious because she's the one that's been there the longest, so she knows all the ins and outs of the house. So obviously she was the one that was in the walls, but maybe she thought it was like a ghost or something. I don't know. But Sydney obviously has been reading her journals, and she's like, I'm going to tell Francesca on you, and you're going to get fucking killed or whatever. And Addie just fucking loses it. She's like, I'm tired of you. I'm tired of your shit. So she kills her, but not before not realizing or, like, learning that Sydney has been there so long because she has so much dirt on Francesca and stuff, and Rocco and all of that. And so they were kind of being blackmailed by her. So that's why she wasn't getting sold for the longest time. And then when that stopped working, that's when she started to act out against Addie, the person that was changing everything for her. So Addie kills her, and then Rio finds her, and he's like, what the fuck? Like, what did you do? And she's like, I'm fucking leaving. I don't care. Like, I'm leaving. And he's like, fine. I will help you, but you have got to be as quiet as you can. So he helps her by, like, killing all of the guards outside of the house. She is grabbing a water bottle. Like, she's grabbing stuff because she needs supplies. So she grabs, like, granola bars and water from the kitchen. She gets caught by some guy. I don't remember who. But one of the, like, guys just sticks around and, like, waits for his opportunity to take advantage of one of the girls. And she kills him because he tries to make a pass at her, and she has a knife. And so she runs for the train tracks, and we cut back to Zaid, where they have been tracking Xavier's movements, because now that he managed to get a hold of two of the girls that were in the house with Addie, they're able to give him information about kind of whereabouts the house is, that it's rural, what it looks like, who's buying Addie. So they give him the name. They're able to follow Xavier's tracks to the house, and kind of just in time, because when they find it and they're driving, they notice that there's, like, a search party. So they quote unquote join. The guys are like, no, we don't need your help. I'm looking for my dog or something. And they're like, okay. So they pull off, and then they go start looking themselves. Daya and Zaid find Addie kind of just in time. Like, a guy was coming up on the train car she was in. Zaid kills him, finds her, and they take her home. So this is kind of all kind of squished, because the second half of the book, the plot kind of starts to fall apart for me. Addie is returned home. They resume training. And then Sibby, who is from the last book, she was the little clown lady at Satan's Affair, who helped Zaid kill, like, Mark and them. She escapes prison. And the minute that Zaid saw on TV that she had escaped, he went to go find her and basically, like, repaid her for taking the fall for the killings that they did together, by giving her somewhere to stay. So Sibby now lives with them at the manor, and she has started to help Addie with her training because Addie is still very iffy about being touched, especially by men. And so is Sibby, since it's another woman, she does a lot better. And then so Addie tells Zaid that she wants to be a part of finding Francesca, Rocco, and Xavier. So they kind of become a team. The team now that we have is Zaid, Addie, Sibby, Daya, and Rocco, or not Rocco, and Jay. So next, they're able to track down Francesca and Rocco because they're trying to just like look through as much surveillance as possible, trying to find like their car, trying to find them. And so they find them at this motel, and they're able to capture them, bring them back to I don't remember if they brought them back to the manor or to Zaid's place. I assume Zaid's place, but I don't remember. Then they're able to locate Xavier at this club where it's essentially like a sex club, but things are consensual as advertised. But then we find out that Xavier knows the people who own it, and so they let him kind of do whatever he wants. Addie goes in, they have like masks and stuff, and she has a wig, so she's not very like recognizable until she talks. And so she comes up to him and she starts talking to him and is basically like egging him on to get him to bring her to a private room. And so he does. And like I said, he has like connections, and so he has this special special privileges where he can lock doors, because that was the big thing that they talked about, was that like everywhere is, since it's consensual, all doors are unlocked so that people can leave at any time, but he's able to go into certain rooms that lock. And so he tries to assault Addie again, but he is interrupted by Zaid making his way in, and then some security guards come in, they get killed, and then they finally get Xavier out. And so they begin the torturing of the three of them, their revenge. They make them complete their own culling, which I thought was actually I liked that part, because I was like, yeah, give them a taste of their own medicine, make them run in the fucking woods. And so, I think like Sibby goes after Francesca, Zaid goes after Rocco, and Addie goes after Xavier. All of them are caught, obviously, because the forest that surrounds the manor is like very dense and large, so they keep getting lost in it, and then they kill them. Sibby plays frisbee with their body parts, and so they have to go find all of the body parts. There's a funny little bit where Zaid has to go find all of like Francesca's, I think, her fingers, all 5 of her fingers, because Sibby just like cut them off and threw them. And then we get to the third act. The third act is a big old mess. So some things are kind of out of place because, again, I grouped things together. There is a third act breakup. By this point, I think kind of mid-second half, and like for all of the third half, Addie and Zaid have begun being intimate again. But all of the scenes are very absurd to me. Like, they're all very strange in the way that the author goes about them. And then Addie's parents are captured by the society, but Addie, Sibby, and Zaid go find them, save them. A bullet that ricochets hits Addie's mom, and so they have to take her to a doctor, but like not a real doctor, or else they would ask questions. They take her to like one of the doctors that Zaid works with, and she's okay, she's stable, but we finally meet Addie's dad, and he's just a dick for no reason. He's like, I'm not letting you see your mom, which is like, like, I understand if you're like confused by the fact that she's like a killer now, but like, let her see her goddamn mom. And so she can't see her mom for a really long time. I don't know how long. I think it's like a month or so. And so they're trying to, and this is like in the last like maybe 4 chapters of the entire book, they're now trying to figure out how to get Claire off of her little island, because she's in this like Epstein Island-esque thing where she's protected and she's like away from everything. And Zayd's like, I have the perfect idea. There's two, I think they're like congressmen or something. I don't know. There's these two important men that are around Claire all the time. And so they're like, well, let's go intercept their flight and let's capture them, but then make it look like they captured us so that Claire has to come and be like, okay, like, I'm gonna go get the diamond and Z. Perfect plan, duh. So Claire takes the bait, but kind of. So she like realizes, she's like, this is a setup, but I'm gonna go anyways because I'm gonna bring like 100 men. And the way that it happens is so stupid because they have bombs set up outside of this random place because they knew, they're like, well, she's gonna know it's a setup, so we're gonna bring a bunch of bombs. But they're gonna be strong enough to kill 100 people, 100 men outside of the building, but not to destroy the building. How does that make sense? Like, bombs are just gonna do what they do and blow shit up. They're not gonna be like, okay, I can only hurt the people, not the building. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it's just a bunch of convenience at the end because Claire is killed. Addie finally sees her mom after like months, and she's been like working with like a home health aide who has a son that kind of helps her like take her to appointments or take her just outside of the house. Because her mom's like, your dad is smothering me. Like, he's making me go crazy, like stir crazy inside that damn house. And so her transporter is named Craven, which, what the fuck is that name? Craven? And Sibby sees him and she's like, what are you doing here? So obviously they know each other. And then in the epilogue, we learn that Sibby just disappeared with him and that she hasn't been seen or heard from for like a month. And then in the epilogue, Addie and Zayd do anal, but like Zayd doesn't ask her about it first. He just does it. And then he proposes to her, and then that's it. That's the end. So that's the entire book. That's Hunting Adeline. I feel like I kind of zoned out for that. I kind of went on autopilot. But let's just get into what I like. So what did I like about the book? There were some moments that did make me chuckle a little bit. I will admit there were some things that were funny. I did like how the author didn't shy away from the horrors of human trafficking. I think she would have done a huge disservice to the actual things that people go through when they are trafficked, by just being like, oh, she's saved, nothing happened to her. Like, I think it's good that she put in some really, really hard scenes to really like solidify that this character is gonna go through it. This is what it's like, as much as we can do from people who are outside of it. She had like so she started off really good with her depiction of PTSD, and then it kind of spiraled, but I still put it on there because I was like, well, there was a point in time in the book where I was appreciative of the way that she did PTSD, but then it kind of spiraled, and then it didn't work anymore for me. And then the thing that I like the most is that there was a lot less anti-Semitism and QAnon stuff. I think obviously you could tell that the author saw the backlash and was like, okay, well, I'm going to make this a very, very small part of the book. Like, definitely towards the end, you could tell that like she did have to come full circle and make some like New World Order claims and stuff when Claire was like, I'll give you the world, like we're gonna take over the world together, and you're like, okay, like whatever. But there was a lot less, so I do really appreciate that. Okay, here's the fun part. Here's what I don't like about the book. The second half of the book is literally like trauma porn. And I don't know how else to say that other than just to call it trauma porn, because what? So I know that the author was just trying her best to use the dark parts of the book, the first half of the book pretty much, to create these dark romance scenes, especially like dark smutty scenes. And it just didn't really work for me because I was like, how the fuck does this like translate into overcoming your trauma? Like, it just doesn't. It feels like we're compounding more things into Addie's trauma, Like, it didn't make sense in my head that after being assaulted and having the person who assaults you multiple times use a knife and cut you open, to be like, oh, well, the only way to get over it is to do exposure therapy, but like not actual exposure therapy. We're just going to do it all over again, but this time it's going to be me, Zaid, who does it. So it's going to work. Like, that's not how that works at all. Like, that's not exposure therapy. That's just re-traumatizing someone. But of course, like, for Addie, the character, she doesn't get re-traumatized because that's not how she's written. She also, like, it was just so, like, I don't know. Because there were so many parts where I was like, yes, tell him. But she was having, like, a mental break. And so it was like she wasn't actually saying these things. She was very, like, traumatized and hurt and, like, doing that thing where when you're having, like, a trauma response, you lash out. But, like, when she would lash out and say things to Zaid, I'd be like, yeah, that's the truth. Like, there was one part where she's like, well, isn't that what you did? Like, you forced me, and now you're just gonna try and help me or something like that. And I was like, yeah, tell him. And then he's like, you don't mean that. I'm like, what the fuck? But it's true. Like, bitch, you also assaulted her and you never apologized for it. You just said, oh, well, you know you liked it. Ew! Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, it just felt like the author wanted to make the most deranged shit happen when they were having sex, to the point where I was like, enough. What the fuck? You don't have to do that anymore. Stop. Enough. Because it's not even, like, cringeworthy. It was just to the point where I was like, this is uncomfortable. Like, I don't like this. Probably because it just wasn't well written. And I didn't put that on a plot, like, in a bullet point, because I just figured I would just say it. I didn't like the writing again. I actually think the writing got worse in this book. I truly think it did. The character development made no goddamn sense. I actually think all of the characters regressed a little bit. Obviously, like, Addie regressed because she had, like, something very traumatic happen to her. But, like, she regressed in the way that she never, like, improved. You know? It just kind of felt like, oh, your trauma's gone now because now you can fuck your boyfriend, ? I don't know, what, your stalker? Okay, so in case you guys didn't know, if you have really bad trauma, especially sexual trauma, the way to get rid of it is to just have sex. That's essentially what it felt like. Like, there was a couple of mentions of a therapist, but after they started to get intimate again, like, there was nothing else about the therapist. And I was like, no! Like, I feel like she would be re-traumatized by half of the shit that happened, but I don't know. Like, it just didn't make sense for her character at all. We'll get into this in the next slide, but there were so many lines where I just had to take a minute and just put the book down. Because here's the thing, so many people are like, I had to put the book down during all these, like, really hard scenes, like the assault scenes, the, like, scenes where she gets really into her trauma. And I was like, see, I didn't have to put the book down for those. I had to put the book down when the author wrote something that was so abhorrently cringe that I felt like I needed to rip my skin off and run in the road. Those were the only times. The plot, I kind of went over this on the last 2 slides ago, whatever. The plot, just in general, in the third act, just fucking fell apart. It just kind of felt like it was like convenience, and I put it down here too. It just felt like convenience after convenience. It was just like, it was like, oh, I forgot we have this plot line to figure out. I'll just do this. Oh, we have to go find these random people on their flight, but it's tomorrow. Oh, don't worry. Zaid's so rich, he has a private jet. Oh, like the bombs. Oh, we have all these bombs that could take out 100 men, but it won't hurt the building. that makes no fucking sense. Like, it just felt like I was like, this doesn't make sense. This does not make sense at all. I don't think we had enough Di or Jay. Those were kind of like my escape characters. Like, when they were on, I was like, okay, I can just read their dialogue and feel a little bit better about this book. But then there wasn't enough of them, so I just felt like I was constantly looking at how many pages I had left of this damn book, because I was like, I need it to be over. I can't wait to read anything else, because I cannot DNF. And then I was like, I just have to finish it. I have to know what the fuck is going on. This felt like I was reading it on Wattpad, and maybe it was intensified because I was reading it on my iPad. I don't have a Kindle, so I just use the Kindle app because it's on Kindle Unlimited. So I was reading on my iPad, and I was like, wow, my iPad or my phone. So I was like, God, I feel like I'm reading Wattpad, because I don't think I've read the term orbs in relation to someone's eyes since I was in 8th grade and I was reading a Harry Styles fanfiction. But the author really loves that word. Thankfully, she didn't say cinnamon as much, but she did say orbs, and I was like, God damn it. Like, I think I'd rather have cinnamon hair back. God. They said they said the word baby way too much. It was like every line of dialogue between Zayd and Addie had the word baby in it. And I was like, you don't have to say that all the time. We get it. You don't have to say it all the time. Enough. It's just so... I hate the word baby. Like, I hate it. I hate it as a pet name. And so anytime it's in a book and I read it and I'm like, ugh. I don't like it. Not for me. Oh, I already went over way too much convenience, especially in that last half. Okay, here's some of my highlights. So this one just felt so millennial core, this first one. And I didn't highlight everything. Like, I kind of forgot about highlighting things. So there's so many things in this book that I just kind of glossed over and didn't even think about. But I could have probably highlighted the entire book and it would have all fit in these cringe lines. So this one says, if Xavier would have killed me before I killed him, I would gladly accept death. And if Zayd tried to resurrect me, I'd put my foot down and refuse to come back. How could I look at myself in the eye after that epic of a failure? Everyone say it with me. Millennial! Epic fail. God. Okay, so this is one of the parts where, like, this was just one instance because I knew that I was going to bring this up. So I was like, I'll just get one. I won't do every single one. But the author always used the most random fucking comparisons, especially during smut scenes, where I was like, why did you have to say that? Like, you could have just left that out. That could have been edited out. So, like, Zayd is going down on Addie, and it says, lapping up everything I have to offer, like he's a prisoner on death row, and this is his final taste of liberation. That made no fucking sense. Like, it makes sense because, okay, yeah, it's a comparison. Like, you can tell that he's, like, desperate for it. But it was, like, every other line had one of those. And I was like, enough! Enough! We get it! He's horny! We get it! He's got a monster dick! We get it! Your vagina is so small. It's smaller than the hole in a needle. And he feels like a banana trying to shove it through the hole of a needle. We get it. We fucking get it. You don't have to make the most random fucking comparisons every other line. Sorry. Next one over here. This one was just one of those where I was like, why did you... It was like this. Epic of a failure. I was like, why did you put it in there? It took me out of the book. It says, the blackness swallows us whole as I soundlessly shut the door behind me. It's so quiet you could hear a mouse fart. That's why I said that this reminded me of reading Wattpad, because that is a joke that you would read when you're reading a smut fanfic about Harry Styles that was written by an 8th grader who has never touched someone in their life. This was something that I noticed in the last book, and I hated it in this book. So here's the thing. We're supposed to be like, oh, yeah, it's like Zayd, kills all these pedophiles, and he, like, blah, 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 like, can't look at children that way. Why did you even add this into his character and the way that he refers to Addie if his whole thing is that he takes on pedophiles? Why do you have to make the comparisons of little girl? Like, it just makes me feel weird. I don't even like in a regular story when the main male love interest says, like, little girl. Like, ew. Especially during, like, sex. Ew. Ew. Enough. Enough. I'm wearing 5-inch black heels, yet I still feel like a little girl standing next to Zayd. He has to be pushing 5'6" or 6'6". I don't care about how small the main character is in comparison to the fucking main male character. I don't fucking care. I don't care. You don't have to make that comparison. And then this was the one that took the cake for me. That's it, Adeline. Now take my comment like a good little girl. Ew. Ugh. Ew. Don't say that. Ugh. And I didn't mark it because I could easily fucking find it in any single smut scene. But like I said on his, like, character slide, he talks so much. So much. And it's always during sex. He says the most random fucking things, and it felt like the author was just trying to find, like, was just grasping at straws of, like, what could I make Zayd say so that someone on TikTok or Instagram puts my quote down so that people are like, oh my god, I have to read this book. Like, you know, like the Instagram reels where it's like books like this, and then it's got like a quote where it's like, who hurt you or something. Or like they'll make an edit with like a certain quote and people are like, oh my god, I have to read this book based off this one quote. It felt like the author was so hyper aware of that trend that she's like, I have to make as many quotes as I can. But every single quote made me want to rip out my eyeballs and eat them. I'm gonna find one. I didn't make a note, so because I knew I was just gonna easily be able to find one. Okay. So here's one. This is when they're fucking on the side of a cliff. Like, who? Like, I feel like they're not like long, but it's just like you're saying too much. There's too many words coming out of your mouth. Oh, he says that's what freedom tastes like. I want you to have that on your tongue while you watch the night fall, and I show you how absolute your life is. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? There's just so many quotes where I was like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Here's my final thoughts. My final thoughts on the book. Like, I didn't even put in, like, what I would do differently, because what I would do differently is that I just wouldn't write this book. I think that the author did do a good job with writing some really difficult scenes. But it kind of felt like all of the work she did to write, like, these really difficult scenes between Addie and her abusers was immediately, like, erased for me when her PTSD kind of turned into something, like, sexy, because for some reason she, like, developed kinks through it, which, not uncommon at all, but it definitely was like, like, it didn't feel like, oh, yeah, take the power back. It was like, oh, this is what we're doing. This series just, I think, truly was not for me. And again, like, I like disturbing stuff, like I said in the first video, but, like, I think what it is for me with both of these books, and the reason why I won't read Sibby's book or literally anything else from this author, is just because I don't think the writing is for me. I don't think it does the job for me. That's what I like a lot about books that are disturbing is that the writing is what gets you through those disturbing moments. And a scene can still be like hard to read, but you can step back and be like, that was really well written. Like the author did a fantastic job writing that. Same thing as like when you watch a horror movie. Like it can be a hard scene to watch, but the direction and the cinematography and the acting can make it so much better. If the acting in a horror movie is bad, then the movie's just gonna fucking suck, no matter the plot or whatever. And that's kind of what it felt like for this. Like it felt like I had no connection to the characters. I literally barely gave a fuck. I really only gave a fuck about Addie because the parts that I did like that were well written did do their job of making me care about her, but not like a whole lot. Like it kind of felt like I went from like -20 to like 0. Like I just went to baseline. Zayd, I could give 2 fucks about that man. I don't care. I think the one thing that I'm excited about is to say like, okay, I did it. I'm done. That's it. I don't have to think about this anymore. I don't have to be like, oh, this is on my TBR. I made it through. I'm done. And now I'm on to better things. Such better things. Like, you know, it's bad when a book, like, you're constantly looking at how many pages and chapters you have because you want it to be over. Not because you want to know what happens, but because you actually just want it to be done. You want to be, I wanted it to be over. So, my rating for this book, 2 out of 5. Frisbee Forest Arms. Yeah. So, that's it. Disappointed, but not surprised. So, thank you all for coming to my book report. I hope it was very informational for you. I felt like I kind of went on like autopilot for a lot of that because I felt like I went on autopilot just while reading the book. So trying to remember what happened was really hard because I think I blocked a lot of it out. If you want to read this book, sure. Check your triggers. And read it. I don't care. If you don't want to read this book, then don't read it. I don't care. It doesn't affect me in any way. This is just also for any of the H.D. Carlton fans who really love going after people who don't like these books. Don't crucify me in the comments. This is just my opinion. My opinion doesn't change the way that you see your own favorite book, or the way that the author writes the book, or your favorite character. This is just how I feel about it. Okay? Thanks. I feel exhausted after reading those books. And I feel like you can tell, like, the difference in my energy from both videos. Like, I feel fucking exhausted after talking about that fucking book. Oh, okay. Well, that's really it. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed my suffering and my pain. Hopefully next time we have a book report, it'll be a book that brings me so much joy and happiness. And I think it will. I'm currently reading Fourth Wing. I'm only 7% of the way through, so I haven't made much progress, but I like it so far for the 4 chapters that I've read. But yeah, so hopefully next book report is so much better and so much more fun than this one. But if you made it all the way through the video, thank you so much for watching. If you watched my last video too, thank you again so much for watching. I know my videos are long as shit, so I hope I kept you somewhat entertained throughout this entire painful, torturous process. If you liked my content, if you liked my video, feel free to like it so that I know that you liked the way that I'm doing things. Leave me a comment so I know what your thoughts are, either on this book, if you've read it, this book even if you haven't read it, any recommendations you might have, or books that you want me to read so that I can review them, leave them down below. And if you really want to catch up with me, feel free to subscribe to the channel. And also, I have an Instagram called Celeste Reads a Lot. That's where I kind of post more frequent reviews that are nicely packaged and not an hour long. I also have a TikTok. It's called Molest, where I just do whatever I want, really. And then I also have my Goodreads if you want to keep up with what I'm currently reading and my progress with all of my current reads. So, yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again for enjoying my suffering, and I hope you all have an amazing day, and I hope whatever book you're reading, it was so much more exciting and so much more happier than this one. Bye!